All right, so draft happened, all this other stuff. Giannis might be thinking about going to other places. That's pretty much what it is. There ain't nothing else I gotta say with the intro here. And with that being said, I actually think that this is like a lot more difficult than it is to actually just do it. Now, if you're a team that's able to get Giannis, who gives a damn? You go ahead and get Giannis or whatever. Does it mean by any means necessary? A little bit, because you don't want to tear down your team so much that it's like Giannis is kind of like, why am I coming here if there's nothing here anyway? Now, I don't think that's all a bad thing or whatever. And let's get into like one of the teams that I think that I was like, I think a little bit of this is like I was like with these teams is a little bit of the team itself and it's a little bit with Giannis because I was like, to me I think that yes, I was like we don't know exactly what we wants. He said championship, so that means he got to go to a team that's got a good enough people while also having something that he can get traded for, obviously, and that means sometime with contracts and a little bit of like young people and picks and stuff like that all at the same time. So but what I'm saying, but I was like, there's some teams like, for instance, like the Heat, the Miami Heat. To me, I was like, I think that that's a different squad of say they had to give up Tyler Hero, Bam, and stuff for him, and you think like, well, now he's just going to Miami and there's nobody for him to play with. Yeah, but I think that a squad like that is different of like, okay, cool, what's our next chess move, what's our next piece, who are the people that we could get? Because guess what, it makes it a little bit better of like, oh, I want to go down to that Heat culture when Giannis is there, when it's like, but then also they didn't get anybody else when Jimmy was there. How do we know it wouldn't be the same thing? And I was like, because you can't fault Milwaukee for trying, it just didn't work out. But to me, I was like, Miami, it seemed like a place that's like, even if you do trade a lot of the core that's technically there, you should be able to get people or play or things there. Now, that's different than like, for instance, I was like a team that I feel like would try, probably fail. It's the Sacramento Kings. I was like, they got Sabonis they could offer. I was like, and I guess I was like Keegan Murray and stuff like that. They got I feel like they got pieces and people a little bit to sort of give them. The question is, you just Giannis want to go to Sacramento? We don't know. The West at the same time, but I think we'll also have a harder argument. But I was like, do you also trade him in the East where he stays and dominates too? So, but I was like, but to me, I was like, I do think that Giannis with a Zach LaVine is a better fit because I was like, while yes, Zach LaVine has the ball in his hands, he's not the same type of ball carrier that it is with Dame. Dame is somebody that needs the ball in his hands. I was like Zach LaVine. I was like is a catch and shoot. I was like he could shoot the three and stuff like that. He to me he's a better guy to play off the ball with Giannis than some of these other places. And that's sort of what it is that my thought is with a lot of these things. Cause I was like Giannis, I was like, it's a guy that needs the ball in his hand to do a lot of his stuff. And I was like, I think that is a lot harder to actually trade for him than it is. I was like I said, you make the trade regardless. But I think that's what makes it hard for him because he's a ball dominant guy, and you need pieces around him, almost in a way like you sort of did with LeBron. Like LeBron, you need more shooters and people like that around than a bunch of ball handlers. I was like the idea, like yeah, you would think that he would want to like sit down for a minute, but no. I was like, yeah, come on. I was like, yeah. I was like, in his later years, it had worked a little bit better, because I was like, you got like Reeves and now with Luka and stuff like that. And I was like, his shooting and all that other stuff has improved, so it makes it a little different. But with Giannis and not being able to shoot, I was like, no, he needs shooters so that when he does do his thing to drive to the lane, he could do it with ease. That's why I was like, the matchup with LaVine works, and the matchup with the Kings not so much. Another team, the Pelicans. Now it all just depends on how you feel about Zion Williamson, because I was like, that would be the trade piece. You would be like, oh, that's what I would trade Giannis for. But except for if he was that guy, you also probably wouldn't trade him for Giannis because I was like of the same like ilk or whatever. I was like to go into the paint, not really a 3-point shooter, had the ball in their hands. I was like can play point in some form or whatever, can bring the ball up and stuff like that. But if there was a way to swing, that's the way to swing. Plus, the Pelicans do have a good plethora of young players and also veterans that they could also give to make the leagues have Milwaukee competitive enough as well. I was like, they still got their picks and stuff, to where I'm like, that could be a spot as well. I was like, you could keep someone like Trey Murphy down there because I think he works really well with Giannis, the defensive dude. I think CJ McCollum to me is a better stick, and you give up DeJounte Murray in there because I was like, he needs the ball in his hands too much to me. That it's too much. But I was like, the Pelicans, I feel like they got enough of an offer, and I think he would be fine in that spot as well too. I was like down there in New Orleans and all that other stuff. That it all just depends on how you feel about Zion in this situation. I was like, the Brooklyn Nets, I think they got a good amount of veterans there. That is like, all right, it's easy to pick and choose who we want here to get. But I was like, but they don't really have nothing to really give Milwaukee, sort of the problem. I was like, he would go there. I was like, a star-studded place. I was like, he put the whole team on the back. There's nobody that you got to worry about, like, how did this mesh here? I think you can get players to go up there as well, too. I was like, I can see that spot to work. It just is like there's nobody up there, kind of like what they're going to give, like Cam Johnson, Cam Thomas. I was like, Speedy. I was like, not Speedy Claxton. Oh, wow, that's making me feel old. But Nick Claxton, I was like, their pick this year. I was like, and it just kind of, I was like, and that you're gonna see, what do you give up in order to get? I was like, in order to get to him while also having people there or whatever. I threw out the Grizzlies, but I threw out the Grizzlies because I was like, oh man, you get trade Jaren Jackson. I was like, for him, and I think that will get you a lot closer to getting Giannis. I was like with Morant there, but I was like, and to be honest, I think the Morant is actually a better, even though he doesn't shoot the ball like that, I do sort of like his fit there with Giannis a little bit better than I feel like how we pictured Dame. But I just think until they figure out what they want to do with Ja is really going to be the hold up here. But I was like, also, I'm not really a Jaren Jackson fan in that type of way. But I think he would fit the city. I think he would fit the team. They do have a good amount of young players too, because they always seem to find like Gigi Jackson. I was like, dang it, I was like, I can't think of the tall dude, and I was like, and of course, I was like, they got a weird assessment of players. I was like, the Warriors, I've seen people throw around, and I think only way the Warriors work is if Milwaukee feels good about Kuminga, because Golden State got to get off of him somehow, and if Golden State wants to just do one big last run. The reason I say that is I'm like, Giannis is young enough to where it's like, okay, cool. Even if these other guys go, he'll still be here. He's about 6 years younger. But do you trade Jimmy Butler for Giannis? I feel like that doesn't seem like I fly with Jimmy Butler. I feel like Golden State, they don't seem like the type to really do that. I was like, or would they just rather go with a team of 4 dudes with, Steph, Jimmy, Giannis, Draymond, and then be like, with these 4 dudes, we can fill out the rest of the squad. I was like, if they're willing to pay the money, I actually kind of like that one a lot. I feel like with the depth and the role players of the NBA now, that you can do that a lot better than, like, say, when Miami had their big 3 and they were trying to fill in the gaps. I was like, and also the way that the apron sort of does work now, I was like, you're going to get a lot of people that's on lower contracts. We sort of seen that this past summer where, like, dude that you used to be able to get, like, see, like, oh man, he's going to get at least like a $20 million contract. It's like, nope, he had to sign a 1 year. I was like, the Buddy Hield now stick on. It's like, I was like, all right, I can. Yeah, I was like, he'd probably make a little. I was like, well, no, if you get into the apron, then they start taking away at your mid-level steps. But you get what I'm saying. I was like, that would be like the team that I'm like, but does Giannis want to do that? Does Giannis want to kind of like, it's almost a KD situation where it's like, yeah, you will be the man, but this is going to help Steph's legacy a lot more than it's going to help your legacy. This will help Jimmy Butler's legacy more than Giannis' legacy at this juncture. When we get down the road and say he gets another championship, then sure we'll just add him up. But right now that puts Steph in a different pedigree. I was like, Jimmy, it finally gets him that notch or whatever. And considering how Jimmy Butler has rise, nobody's ever going to be like, he needed to do this on some other team. They're going to be like, man, he did so good by himself, and we thought he was this. He got a championship, of course. So I'm saying, and that Giannis to be like, oh, okay, yeah, he won it with some other dudes. Okay, cool. We'll treat it better than how we did the KD situation, but you get what I'm saying. Now, of course, you always got the major ones. You got the Mavs. They got the number one pick. I really don't think that's a good fit. But if you can get Giannis, like I said. The Rockets, I don't know. I was like, I think they got the most intriguing pieces because I was like, but you would have to give up Sengun in that one to me than Jalen Green, to be honest. I like how Sengun and Giannis is not compatible. So, but they got the most pieces and the most intriguing with, because they're gonna have another pick this year. That's like, what do you do with these picks that you got? I was like, I see the Rockets probably being one of the better odds. Now, two teams I picked up that I was like, could be. Now, I was like, I don't think it's possible, but that don't mean that you'd be damned if you ain't trying. The LA Clippers. I think that just fits what they want to do. I think that they're totally, if they could figure out a way to do it, I think they would, while trying to basically keep Kawhi, and I was like, I think James, and I'm like, and we keep trying to find ways of like alleviating pressure from James, but at this point, he is what he is. But I think that would be the two that I'm like, okay. I was like, they go to keep them, and how many of them other people you could keep? Now the problem is they don't really have picks. They don't really have anybody outside of like Zubox that you know what I'm saying. And I was like, also too, I was trying to actually think. I was like, do you sort of give up James Harden in this situation and keep like Norman Powell? Cause I'm trying to think of what worked with Kawhi's fine with Giannis. I was like, he get his own shot, it's easy, it's fine, and he out the way. Kawhi can play off in the corner, that's cool. And I was like, James can too, or whatever. He can run the offense. I do think he is a good fit with Giannis, but you also got to make some money of this go the other way. And I was like, if you have to get rid of, I was like, James or Norman Powell, I was like Norman Powell, who was consistent throughout the season, and in the playoffs he was up and down. James Harden, who we already know his story. The other team that I want to throw out is the Detroit Pistons, because they have been doing nothing but accumulating talent or whatever between Stewart, Durant, Ivy. I was like Asar. That I'm like, they have enough pieces to throw at Giannis of like just young players. They've been in the playoffs this year. And also draft picks. I was like, I think they get what Milwaukee sort of wants of the three things that they're looking for. I was like, and you got Cade. When we seen Cade, I was like, first full year with able to stamp it. It all depends sort of with the Rockets. How much do you try to jump forward? And I was like, you know what? I was like, the Spurs. I'll throw the Spurs in there. Of also how much you want to drive forward versus being like, yo, let's develop a young core OKC Golden State situation here. I think that's going to be the dilemma. But I was like, but they got the chance to do it. I was like, the reason I didn't throw the Spurs in here because I was like, I know people like Giannis and Victor, and it's like, yeah, Victor does sort of play the 5, but he sort of really wants to be a 4. I was like, Giannis, he's not a 5, he's really a 4. I was like, how much did that take away from Victor when Giannis got the ball in his hand constantly? So, but I was like, I think that Detroit could be a dark horse. I thought about putting teams like the Bulls, but I was like, they don't have anybody there. Unlike Miami, that's like, cool, you got some pieces you could trade away and like will to start. I was like, they don't have nothing that's even worth a damn in trading in that regard or anything like that. There were a couple other times, like Phoenix. I was like, no, as long as Bradley Beal's there and you can't get rid of him. Like, if you could get rid of Bradley Beal, I'd be like, oh, send him to Phoenix and have him play with Devin Booker. That's what it really would be like a perfect match. It would be Phoenix, but you can't. I was like, you're not training KD there. That's not going to Milwaukee. That ain't working. Bradley Beal ain't going nowhere. So therefore, you're hamstrung or whatever like that. And there's not really too many teams in the East that you could, or even they wanted to. I feel like in the East, I was like, that's why I only really gave like 2 of them because they're gonna ship his ass out west. I feel like they can. Anyway, where do you think Giannis should go? Let me know. Till then, we're gonna keep watching more of the playoffs as we got more all-season discussion. Till then, peace. I'm out.